Thank you very much for inviting me tonight to speak about something that we care very much about in Decision Lab. That's consumers, it's internet, and it's media. So what I'm going to talk a lot about tonight is the connected consumer. The consumer that is basically connected to the internet. Before I get started, I actually want to ask all of you a question. And the question is, how many internet-connected devices are there in Vietnam? I should probably mention that for the one who gets closest to the number that I have on my presentation here, will get a small gift bag here. So anyone have any idea about how many devices that actually is here in Vietnam? No, Jason, it doesn't really work. You have seen the number, right? Anyone? 3 billion, okay. That's a guess, at least. Yes? One more time? 100? 150 billion? 150 million. Okay, that's a good guess. 90 million. 95 million. 250 billion, great. Yeah, okay. Okay, so the number that I have here on my slide is 92,435,500 devices, right? So I think you actually, yeah, maybe you can share the back here actually. So please. Now what is truly amazing with this number here is that it's growing rapidly, and I mean rapidly. Actually, during this event here, approximately 371 new devices will be available and in use here in Vietnam. I think it's very fair to assume that in 2017, then there will be more internet-connected devices in Vietnam than human beings. If you look a little bit into the device usage, then we find that a person who is connected with the internet is on average using approximately 2 devices. Approximately 2 devices. 90% they own at least one smartphone. Around 57% own at least one computer. 13% own at least one internet-enabled TV. And around 18% they own a tablet. And then at least 4% over here, they own some sort of other internet-connected device. That could be, for example, a smartwatch, it could be a gaming device, or something else. We believe that this number here that is now flying out of the screen here is going to explode over the next few years. And we will see more and more exotic devices getting connected to the internet. And I brought an example for you tonight here. The new Samsung fridge. And I think it's fair to say that this fridge here is no ordinary fridge at all. Actually, every time you close the door on this fridge here, it actually takes a picture of the content inside. These pictures here can be accessed from your mobile phone, which is very convenient, right? So when you're standing in the supermarket and you forgot whether you actually had eggs in your fridge, then you can just look at the picture and then you can actually figure out if you should purchase more eggs. But that's not all. This fridge here can do a lot more. You can access recipes directly from the fridge, and the most progressive retailers have now linked up their e-commerce site so you can order groceries directly from your fridge. If this go mainstream, or let me rephrase that, when this type of fridge go mainstream, it will certainly disrupt the grocery category. That's a fact. Now, you might be saying, okay, that's great. It's great to know that we have a lot more devices available in Vietnam. It's great to know that in the future we will have internet-connected fridges and so forth. But what should I know about this connected consumer? How is this connected consumer gonna impact my sales and marketing right now? Now, the first thing that you should know is that the connected consumers are now a majority here in Vietnam. In fact, 66% of the population is now reachable online. 66%. Now, some of you that are sitting out there, you might think, okay, that's because in the urbanized areas, the internet penetration is so high, this certainly do not take into consideration the rural areas. And that is wrong. Actually, in fact, around 60% of the rural people here in Vietnam is now connected with at least one device. In the urbanized areas, the internet connection, or the internet penetration is much, much higher. It's around these 78%. And actually, if you look at Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, the internet penetration is even higher. We are in the 80s. Now, you might think that given that we get so many new devices, then basically what will happen is that people spend less time on other kind of devices. For example, TV. I think Ricardo, he was pointing this one out, that people in general are spending less time on TV. Now, since 2014, we have been tracking hundreds of digital campaigns. Some of these campaigns here, they are also aired on TV. When these campaigns, they are aired on TV, we get the chance to basically estimate the incremental reach generated by the digital campaign. So that is basically this particular area here on the chart here. Now, the interesting thing is that if we compare the incremental reach from 2015 to 2016, then what we have seen is that it has basically been lifted with around 17%. That basically means, as Ricardo also pointed out, that you're losing eyeballs if you're not investing on digital. And we believe that this trend will basically continue. In a brand new study that we're basically conducting right now and are gonna release in the middle of April, then we have been asking the connected consumers if they're considering canceling the traditional TV subscription. 9% they said that they already canceled the traditional TV subscription. And 16% said that they certainly will cancel the traditional TV subscription in the near future. Now, what does all this then mean? It means that if you haven't started to invest in digital, then now is time. Otherwise, you might end up getting disconnected from your target consumers. Now, the second fact that you should know is that connected shopping is on the rise. And let me motivate this one here a little bit with a study conducted by Reality Mind in UK. In UK, Reality Mind, they can basically collect mobile data on the panelists. And they can do this passively, right? They have an app installed on their panelists' mobile phones, and this app will automatically send all the mobile activities to Reality Mind. And what Reality Mind then does is that they look into how the mobile phone is utilized in the purchasing journey. In this particular case, we got data on a lady called Katie. And Katie, she is in between 22 and 30 years old. She is employed, and she is definitely a fashion shopper. If you look at all the activities that she's performing throughout the day, then she's visiting multiple fashion sites. In fact, she's starting out her day at 7:11 a.m. in the morning by looking for a bomber jacket on this particular site here. Around 8:30 in the evening, she's back again looking for this bomber jacket, now on a new site. And actually, a couple of hours before that, she was looking for a bomber jacket, but for men, on the same site. Now, from a marketeer and an e-commerce perspective, a couple of things here, very, very interesting. Around 4 o'clock until around 5 o'clock, she's spending time on advertising-enabled platforms. That brings a possibility for marketeers to basically reach her with advertising content. And if you were one of the lucky sites that she basically visited earlier that particular day, then you can present her with a great promotion, right? And lure her back in and basically get her to purchase. Now, another interesting thing here is that during this particular day, she never finalized the purchase. She's browsing throughout the day, but she never finalized the purchase. The purchase, in fact, never happens on the mobile phone. Now, the report didn't say anything about whether Katie here, she ended up purchasing offline on a different device. But it definitely shows that her mobile phone is a very, very important tool for collecting and gathering data about fashion, right? Furthermore, this sparked our interest to basically investigate the state of connected shopping here in Vietnam. So let's take a look at Vietnam. Now, the first thing that we're looking into here is basically how people they are doing connected product research across different categories. And one thing that you should know is that connected product research performed online, that is happening in all categories. All categories. Some more, some less. Those that have a very, very high amount of online product research is flights, it's hotel, it's mobile, and laptop. In fact, 94 out of 100 flight ticket purchase, they are accompanied with a product research conducted online. In the other end of the scale here, we have some categories that are less researched in general. And when they are researched, they are primarily researched offline. And right now here in Vietnam, that is groceries, it's hair care, and it's OTC. We also looked a little bit into how and which device people they are utilizing when they are performing this connected product research. And this is a little bit interesting, actually, because we found that in 61% of the cases where a connected product research was performed, then a computer, at least one computer was involved. Only 49% of the cases included a smartphone. And this is quite interesting, right? Because the penetration of the smartphone is much, much, much higher than the penetration of computers. But the consumers, when they are performing this kind of research, they like to use the computer. Now, if you go one step further in the purchasing journey and look at whether the purchase was actually performed online and offline, then we start to see the categories, they are actually changing a little bit around. So to the left of, to the right, sorry, on this chart here, then we have categories that are primarily purchased offline. In the other end of this chart here, you have categories that are now purchased more frequently online than offline. Again, no surprise, long distance travel is coming out as the winner. But what is quite interesting is to see that short distance traveling is actually the runner-up. And then we have a lot of categories here in between where we have nearly the same amount of online purchases as offline purchases. If we zoom in on the categories here that basically have a significant amount of online purchases and look at the device, we get a quite interesting chart as well. On the right here, we have purchases that were performed on a computer, and to the left, we have basically purchases that happened on a mobile phone. Now, what is quite interesting is that the winner here that had the most purchases online, that happens on a computer. The runner-up, short distance, that's happening on mobile. And then we have beauty, clothing, and so on, where we have nearly the same amount of purchases performed on a computer as on a mobile phone. Now, if we look a little bit at the short distance traveling, I think it's fair to say that we all know actually, that this particular category has been under disruption, not only here in Vietnam, but across the globe. Here in Vietnam, this disruption is led by especially Uber and Grab, right? I mean, these two guys, they have done an amazing job in terms of getting us to install their app and start purchasing in-app. In fact, they have done such a good job that nowadays, 82% of all mobile purchases are basically purchased in-app. So it's purchased from a branded utility app. In all fairness, I should mention that both Vinazon and Mylin, they have apps nowadays, and that is included in this number here. What is furthermore quite interesting is that if you start multiplying these numbers with the mobile purchases and the purchases overall, then you find that nearly half of all short distance traveling is basically purchased from an app nowadays. I mean, if I said a couple of years ago that in 2017, then the Vietnamese consumers, half of all purchases will happen in-app, then people, you will say to me, you're goddamn crazy. That will never, ever happen, right? But now here we are. Half of all the purchases when it comes to short distance traveling is purchased from a branded utility app. Another category that we've been looking a little bit into is the fashion and beauty category. And what we have here on the chart is basically the amount of the purchases that goes to different kind of platforms. So around 4% of all online purchases, they go to the brands. 34% goes to e-commerce websites. But what is really truly amazing is that the big guy here, that's Facebook. Facebook is nowadays accounting for more online purchases than, say, Lazada, Tiki, and all the e-commerce platforms all together. Okay, the third fact, that is that the connected consumer is social. This is no surprise. Facebook is coming out on the top. Around 96% of all connected consumers are utilizing Facebook. But what is quite interesting is to see that some of the well-known multinational platforms, they have a very low presentation. On the other hand, we have a couple of local platforms, Zalo and also Sing, that actually have a fairly high penetration. We've also been looking a little bit into instant messaging platforms, and the picture here is a bit the same. So Facebook Messenger comes out on the top, Zalo second, and then we have Viber and Skype taking up a quite significant piece of the market. But again, we have a long tail of also well-known platforms, for example, WeChat, but you're not taking up any significant amount of the market. Okay, just to recap, just to say, what is it that you should remember from this presentation here? First of all, remember, Vietnam is nowadays a connected country. The media landscape is getting more and more fragmented, right? We're getting more and more platforms, we're getting more and more devices. And do remember, if you're planning a new campaign, do remember what works on TV might not work on a laptop, and what works on a laptop might not work on a smartphone, right? The connected consumer is performing product research online, period, in all categories. In all categories, some more than others, but all categories. And that means that as a brand, you need to have an online presence. Certain categories have been app disrupted and more will follow. Just wait for the fridge, then the groceries will not be taking up the last place in terms of online purchases. Facebook is becoming an e-commerce platform. That's very, very important. And this is going to be a marketplace for especially small retailers. Small retailers suddenly have an opportunity to reach a tremendous amount of people without having any significant investment into building up e-commerce platforms. The final point is that the connected consumer is social. Nearly everyone are at least using one social media platform. That's it. Thank you.